The increase in regulation globally means banks and other financial institutions are looking for ways to manage risk using third-party solutions to ensure they are compliant.
To explain how this is playing out across the world, we're joined by Guy Harrison, who's General Manager of Risk and Compliance at Dow Jones. Guy, welcome to Sibos TV.
Thank you. Hi.
Guy,
Hi.
talk to us. What does the current global risk and compliance landscape look like right now?
It's an interesting time for risk and compliance globally. As you mentioned, regulation is really not going away. I think, if you look back 18 months or so, people thought that maybe the regulatory landscape would start to step back a little bit, but we're seeing, if anything, more enforcement, more regulation, more changes to existing regulations. And I think, sanctions is a great example of that, seeing that used more and more as a foreign policy tool today. And I think that's coupled with a lot of new technology that's starting to really disrupt the GRC marketplace as well.
And let's take a look at the regulatory environment in different markets, because yes, it is evolving, but there are different forces at play, aren't there?
Absolutely. I mean, I think historically you've seen the US lead the way with some of the new regulations, some of the increased enforcement of that regulation. That's starting to spread across the globe now. Certainly Europe are stepping up the enforcement, and that's moving across to Asia. I think also it's tend to be very financial services focused over the last few years, but now you're starting to see more and more regulation affecting corporates. Corporates are starting to be more concerned about how they comply, and the reputational and business impacts of the regulation that's tended to focus in financial services historically.
Guy, you mentioned corporates. What kind of organisations should be concerned?
I think it's very broad, right? So really, any company with customers or third-party suppliers, right?
That is very broad.
So it is
supply chains.
anybody with a complex supply chain, right? We're doing a lot of business with some of the primary industries, extraction, where they have very long, complex supply chains that they need to understand that could be subject to sanctions regulation. But really, everybody, there's a basic level of hygiene that they need to do now, and they're really starting to come to terms with.
Now, one of your answers, you use the S word, sanctions.
Yes.
And can you give us an idea about how sanctions are affecting individuals or firms? So you kind of touched on that, in fact, with the reference to supply chains. But take us on that journey.
There's probably two things that are really driving the sanctions landscape at the moment. Firstly, constant changes to sanctions. And I think when we talk to our customers, they struggle to keep up with the changes to the regulation. As I mentioned, it's increasingly being used as a foreign policy tool, so to navigate the complexity of that environment. The second is that complexity. So you're starting to see sanctions regulation go deeper and deeper, and there's more information that's required in order to be able to comply. You see that now with the OFAC 50 and the EU 50% rules, where it's not just the entity that's on a sanctions list that you have to identify, but the ownership structure behind those entities as well. And I think that's what our clients, our customers are looking to us for, to help them navigate that increasingly changing and complex landscape to ensure that they're compliant and they mitigate the business and reputational risks associated with who they're doing business with, either as a customer or a supplier.
Guy, talk to us about how you have been developing your brand and your capabilities in this space.
So Dow Jones Risk and Compliance was formed 2001, so we have a fairly long history of dealing with these regulations, and we've built the business up by adding more and more content sets, really very much focused on the quality of that information, targeting at compliance officers. But I think now what we're really seeing with the rise of some of these new technologies is the intelligence and the insight that people want to see overlaid on top of that base data, and that's really what they're looking to us for.
And that leads quite nicely into the question which I want to put to you, in fact, because a lot of companies are facing challenges from AI technologies and machine learning. I mean, what are the issues that they're going to have to deal with? How's it going to impact on the way that they do business?
So I think a couple of things. Firstly, AI and machine learning is making more and more information available to customers than ever before. And it's making it available in a much more immediate manner. But unfortunately, in our world, more information isn't necessarily always better. And I see some of our customers struggling to sort of deal with an overload of information that's being delivered by some of these new AI and ML technologies. That said, what you can do and where we're using AI and ML is to really sort of help drill down on the relevance of that information, sorting good news from bad news. Fake news is something that is impacting a lot of people at the moment. So helping to take that broad, big funnel of information in and make sense of it.
Guy, what sort of services does Dow Jones provide to help organisations maintain compliance?
So we've historically been very focused on anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing regulations and helping our customers mitigate that. So in particular, sanctions, information, politically exposed persons, and the news associated with their third parties. We've made a couple of acquisitions over the last year or so that really started to move us into the third-party risk management space. So we're now not just a data provider, but providing software and intelligence on top of that information to help our customers mitigate those risks.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
Well, luckily, it's me.
Guy Harrison, thank you so much for joining us on Sibos TV. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.